what this platform that you found yourselves in is about. It's a very explosive platform. Just wait and see. Tonight, we will be talking to the real estate NQF Level 4 course that Bemore Institute is offering. As much as this will sound like it's an estate agent focus, but it's about the kind of information that you will get exposed to allow you to be a proper real estate developer. I think the past 2 weeks we're preparing you to have the foundation to be an entrepreneur. And then what kind of entrepreneur are we talking about? One of those areas is actually real estate. Please allow me to switch over and share my presentation with you. I will come back shortly once I'm done to talk to you again. So I'll be sharing my presentation. Is everyone, can you see the screen on the presentation?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. As I've said, it's the Real Estate NQF Level 4 presentation. My name is Numisa with a background in accounting. I'll tell you more about myself, but I'm also on the path. I've started my journey to be an entrepreneur. I come from the corporate world and public service as well. But then before the end of this week, I'll tell you my story. If we can just come back now to the course. This qualification is divided into 3 learning units, which is the real estate platform, the real estate legislation, and the real estate practice. This week, we'll be focusing on the real estate platform. The other 2 modules you will unlock them when you actually register for the full course. I hope you enjoy the ride with us. What are the exit level outcomes that I expected from a learner by going through this qualification? By the end of this course, you will be able to analyze, evaluate, and apply the real estate code of conduct and ethics. You'll be able to demonstrate knowledge of the real estate environment and the various laws, rules, and regulations that impact on the real estate function. And over and above all, you'll be able to perform the real estate function. What is real estate business? If you can look at the picture at the bottom of the page, it says, what is real estate? Real estate is defined as the property, land, buildings, air rights above land, and underground rights below. So this is more what you would see when development planning is happening. So we look at residential, commercial building, industrial, and also vacant land. The estate agency business is basically all about helping others buy and sell their properties. The business is primarily about communication, how you are able to interact with the seller and buyer so that they can make and break a deal. So that communication can make or break a deal. You will be required to have extensive knowledge of the local marketplace to enable you to give the client a ballpark figure that is likely to be achieved for the property. We will look at this and look at how to garner that information and understand the area where you choose to operate in. The other one is that the property market can prove to be highly unpredictable. Within a short period of 6 months, conditions can change immensely from a buyer's market to a seller's market. We will touch on that as well to explain to you what does it mean to both the buyer and to the seller when those markets are in those conditions. What we all know is that people will always need a property to live in. So this business can be extremely lucrative for the right person with the excellent skills and the correct work ethic. We will now go into the introduction to real estate. That is the section that I will be covering this evening. One of the key features when you are in real estate is to understand the platform on which you are operating on. It's like, there is a poem that says all the world is a stage. So you need to understand the stage, and then so that you can actually present your business properly. People buy and sell property as homes, investments, and business premises all the time. And the real estate agent sits in the middle of the dynamics created by the buyer-seller relationship. What are these dynamics we are talking about? Cultural diversity. South Africa is known as a country with many faces, as you can see on the picture on the right. What is culture? Culture is often defined as a society's way of life, the manner in which its members conduct their day-to-day lives. It includes the knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, laws, and behaviors that define a group of people that we usually refer to as society. Within a society, there are different types of cultures with experience. The first culture is the family culture, which is defined by the parents in that home or whoever is the leader in the family. Their influences, they come from their social interaction, and that's what the kids will be taught and get used to. Some of them they've inherited, some of them are coming from their traditions. So usually in homes where there are two parents, then you try and merge all these backgrounds that come with the parents. We also have a culture that is a national culture. When you look at South Africa as a country, our culture is shaped by our languages, which are usually related to certain customs that we practice. And then we have different kinds of religions. We have Christianity, there is Hinduism in the country, there is Islamic, there is a traditional religion that other people follow. And then we also have different kinds of politics in the country. So that is the culture of South Africa. So we need to understand all of this. And then there's also the element of a corporate culture, the work environment influenced by the economy and the company founders. When you look at the work environment of a marketing organization, for an example, the environment there it looks like it's laid back, it's carefree, the dress code is not, it's semi-formal. But then when you look at the law firm, things are slightly different in there. All of these things that you see in there is more the culture of these organizations as they are defined by whatever that their sector represents. And then there is also something that you must take into consideration, things like the host culture. For an example, you might have a company located in Johannesburg, but you have a branch, for an example, in KZN. In that sense, KZN is hosting you. And what you will experience is that there will be a little bit of a Zulu culture that will come into your organization, as well as the Indian culture. If you're in the Eastern Cape, the Xhosa culture will also come into your organization. So these are things that you need to embrace. As you are working in a real estate with a different diversity of people and cultures, it is extremely important and vital that you be a practitioner of cultural effectiveness. Therefore, you need to adapt to culture, and that is very important. Another dynamic that affects practicing real estate is demographics. What do we mean by demographics? The characteristics and statistics of human population, especially its size, growth, density, distribution, and statistics regarding birth, marriage, disease, and death. Factors such as the typography of the area will provide valuable information. What do we mean about that? You look at, if you have chosen to operate in a particular geographical area, you'll need to look at what is the area dominance. Is it mostly business? Is it a residential area? Is it an industrial area? What types of housing, if you are in a residential area? Is it estates? Is it cluster homes? Is it flats? Is it townhouses or established suburbia? What we also need to take into consideration when defining your area is also the historical real estate data. What are those? The area rates and taxes, the home price range, the home sizes, access to highways, schools, and shopping centers. Because all of these you need to take into consideration, especially things like your area rates and taxes, that when you actually buy that property, as much as you'll be doing your bond repayments, but you also need to factor in your area rates and taxes, which are influenced by the price of your property, and you pay it monthly. So when you budget, those things are important. What social influences are there? So you look at things like proximity to the closest informal settlements, the crime statistics in the area. You decide, you young family, you're a parent who travels, so it's important to know what crime statistics are there and what kind of security measures you must put in place to protect your family. And also, even if you would like to be part of that particular area, what are the available hospitals around and services? And then what's also important is the population demographics. Who are the typical buyer in this area? Their age group, their income, their family setup. Why is this important? Someone might be looking for a lock-up a facility where you can go on holidays, or you could be in an estate living kind of option. But then it's important to know what is the age group in the estate that you are buying in. Because if it's an estate that usually has people that have reached the retirement age, those individuals probably take afternoon naps, and the time of their afternoon naps usually coincide with the time that kids come back from school and they want to run around in their bicycle and play outside, and that could create conflict. So it's important that you share this information with your potential buyer or your seller, and also you as an investor, you need to understand those things. So the diagrams below, or the graphs below, they show, how the kind of report information that you can look at when you are actually assessing an area. That particular area, the income levels, if you see on my left-hand side, it's showing, that it's some kind of pie chart is showing the various income groups that are prevalently staying in this area. And then on the right-hand side, you look at what kind of establishments are there. It's mostly flats. There are freeholds somewhere in there. There are rooms. So, you kind of profile what kind you can. And you get this information is available. There are organizations that specialize in collating it, like your TPN and your Lightstones, which with TPN, basic information you can get by just registering with them, not necessarily, but you can subscribe as more information you want. So it's this information is available. What's important is to know where to find it. And then another aspect, as we're talking about the real estate, is the context within which you operate. The property market in South Africa is dependent on a variety of external factors, which we refer to as the macro environment. There are various analyses that you can use to actually gather the environment under which you conduct your business. In here, we opted to look at the Pascal analysis. So you would look at the politics and legal aspects that affect real estate, the various land reforms. A lot of people are still worried. We have the land expropriation bill out. There are different discussions. It might not affect residential properties. What is the impact on land, especially farming land? Will the sizes be reduced? So those are things that are the reality of this environment, and you need to take into consideration and assess its impact. The National Credit Act. This act is been put out there because, South Africans were generally struggling with debt, and we needed to introduce something that will try and make sure that there is responsible lending and borrowing out there. So to a certain extent, then it affects the affordability of the real estate, but it doesn't help that you issue someone with so many loans and they can't repay it. So, it's a responsible thing that we have adopted. There is a Coastal Management Act. This act is more prevalent, or it applies mostly in all the provinces around along our coastal areas. So your KZN, your Western Cape, your Eastern Cape, and Northern Cape. This is to protect our shores and the coral reef. So it manages and looks at the developments that are happening around those areas. And then Eskom power cuts, most of the majority of the power that we have, electricity, is provided by our state. So politics play a major role in there. Therefore, what does it mean for the environment? The BEE, with the introduction of the BEE and affirmative action, there is a whole new group of individuals that have been exposed to economic emancipation. Therefore, it means there are potential new investors in the market, in the real estate market. You want to target those. You would like to have a look and understand what happens in there. And then the next one, we look at the economy in general. What is inflation? What does inflation mean for the real estate market? We'll talk to that later. Interest rates. You need to understand that and understand what it happens. Investment, things like shopping mall developments. What does it mean? Shopping malls, they attract traffic around this area. But then for someone who's probably a single person with no kids, might like, wow, this is great, convenience just next door. But then for someone who has kids, it might mean a totally different thing if you would like to have space for your kids to play and less traffic, because, you're worried about other crime factors that might come in there. So not things mean different things for different people. It depends on the situation. Social, the crime, you look at the crime aspect. You also look at the traffic. Is it a congested area? If it is a congested area, is there sufficient public transport? Do I have to sit in traffic? Can Gautrain buses pass by my area? Are the Ria Vias able to can I get access to that? So those are the social things you take into consideration when you make your investments. And whether you're a property developer, same applies, because you need to be able to attract buyers to buy into your development. Increase in estate living. This has been an offshoot, especially from the crime aspects of our country. Another issue that we look at, the advancement and the development of technology. Technology has ensured that e-commerce happens, especially now that under the current situation we find ourselves in due to COVID-19. It means that we can do transactions online and, without necessarily meeting physically with individuals, or it minimizes the level of interaction. Online property marketing, that's another thing that that helps with all of this. We also look at environmental issues. Green buildings. Green buildings is something that is still slowly getting there in our country, but it has become an offshoot, from the political side, the Eskom power cuts. People have decided to invest in, getting off the grid. You will have, so your power, you get it directly from the sun, so you invest in solar. You also look at making sure that maybe the water as well. You'll limit the usage of the municipal water to consumption, but everything else, your gardening, watering your garden, or just the bathing, your showers and your bathrooms, you use the water that you harvest and probably have a tank installed in there. These are usually capital intensive at the beginning, but in the long run, it will decrease the municipal, the money that you will spend on municipal accounts. So that is your context that you take into consideration. Another aspect with all this information, what we're saying is that you need to know how to access this information. Estate agents must make sure that they stay abreast of economic trends, developments, and changes in legal framework to make sure they are able to advise clients accordingly and act within the law. So banks, an example there is FNB. These pictures are not in any way promoting any brand, but this is just examples of the kind of reports you can find out there. The Reserve Bank will also show you, this report is showing the relationship between mortgage advances, the growth, and the interest rate. There are estate agents as well, other estate agent companies that also have a wing in there that do the analysis and give you this kind of thing. So before you actually invest, you can go around and look at what is the average price for a sectional title, what is an average price for a property, a freehold property, so that at least you know that whatever price you will pay or whatever price you will charge as a seller is market related. And then another aspect, before we move on in there, I'm not sure if there are any questions. We are still together?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. Another aspect that we in the real estate environment we need to look at are the economics that drive this particular market. We look at the particular important concepts. We will also look at interest rate and inflation. We'll also look at buyer versus the seller's market and general the competitive real estate market. The first concept we're going to touch on is the supply relationship. What does the law of supply says? It says that the quantity demonstrate the quantity that will be sold at a particular price. So if you look at the graph on the right-hand side, P1 represents a particular price, and at that particular price, this is the amount, this is the quantity, that is A, the quantity that the manufacturers or suppliers in the market are prepared to actually supply. So the law of supply states that the higher the price, the higher the quantity supplied. The law of supply also states that as the price of an item goes up, suppliers will attempt to maximize their profits by increasing the quantity offered for sale. So the prospects of the profits is very lucrative, and everybody now, as the price goes up, they're like, okay, we're prepared now to come in there. The supply in a market can be depicted as an upward slope, as we can see in here. That shows how the quantity supplied will respond to various prices over a period of time. Another concept that is important is the demand relationship. The law of demand says if all other factors remain equal, the higher the price of a good, the less people will demand that good. The market demand curve expresses the quantity demanded at each price across all consumers in the market. Demand is derived from the law of diminishing marginal utility. The fact that consumers use economic goods to satisfy their most urgent needs first, so as consumption increases, the marginal utility derived from each additional unit declines. The marginal utility, basically, we're talking about satisfaction. When you're a student and still studying, you have a very long list of the things that you're going to buy when you start making money. So what happens is that, I know I speak for a lot of ladies that one of the items that made it to our list were shoes and handbags. And definitely you will start buying those shoes and the handbags. But then at some point in time, you will reach a point where you're like, okay, it's no longer a priority now, or it's no longer a thing that I really want to buy because, I think I have almost all the colors that are sold out there, and I have enough shoes. We can never have enough shoes, but we kind of slow down a bit. So basically that's what it means. And so what also it says is that the shape and magnitude of demand shifts in response to changes in consumer preferences, incomes, or related economic goods, not to changes in price. As much as when you start working, you know all the sales that are happening and you know exactly when they happen. The nice part about the sales is that you'll get something at 50, 60, others up to 70% off. There was a sale when I started working that happened every January at Spitz. Of course, they sell shoes. So I wanted to see myself there every year. But then the downside of sales is that it is very congested. You'll probably just dash out during lunch hour and come back without even getting a sales consultant to help you, because it's very hectic, it's busy, and you're thinking the sale started on Monday. If I wait for the weekend, I will find nothing at the shop that will, all the good stuff would have been gone. But then when your income increases, you're thinking, okay, maybe I can just go when they have a 20% discount. I don't really want to go at that point in time. So what that means is that during the January time, when Spitz analyzes their sales, it would have gone down. But of course, there will be other new entrants in the market. But specifically me as someone who didn't really have a pleasant shopping experience at the sales. And now you're like, okay, with my income, at least now, I don't really have to necessarily chase those sales. I can leave it to other times, the June one, which is not as good, as great as the January one, but at least you still get discounts. So that's what, and also your preferences. When you start having children, then as much as you would like that handbag, but there are other things that you need to put to your use to. So it's not necessarily changes in price, but the preferences, income, and other economic goods that you actually need. Now let's bring these two concepts together and look at the importance of the law of supply and the law of demand. The supply and demand set the price and the amount of a good that will be produced. If you can see, as the demand increases, the available supply also decreases. So whatever is in the market, if there are many people who buy it, then you start having lesser of that particular product in the market. What happens here? So if we look on the graph at price 1, and not many suppliers are interested in actually producing this particular product. But for us, for the consumers, because it's at that price, everybody wants this particular product. And then what happens? The gap shows the shortage out there in the market, because suppliers are not really excited by the price, but consumers are overly excited by that particular price. So as the shortage happens, what happens is, so the price will increase eventually, and then more and more suppliers start to enter the market, because now they're like, okay, maybe I will be able to make some money. And then there is a point in time where the actual demand, as you can see, the demand curve sloping down, and the actual supply curve, they interact. And we call this point the equilibrium point. The equilibrium point is the market price for a given good that ensures that the quantity of goods supplied is equal to the number of goods demanded. So at this point, prices are perfectly set to interest the consumers to purchase goods, at the same time ensure that companies produce neither too much or too little a product. The assumption behind the market economy is that supply and demand are the best determinants for an economy's growth and health. So what happens in there? Everyone is winning. The suppliers are supplying at the rate they will still maximize their profits, or they will still make profits, and they also, your consumer are happy because they wants to come in because the price is quite good. That's probably, we're not yet there now. We are getting there with the PPE as far as COVID-19. Hence, we have people, because there is a demand, they are spiking the prices as well. But then, we're so scared of the disease. We are also not short on the demand side of things. And then, as we were talking about the surpluses and the shortage, scarcity and choice in real estate. Scarcity means that people want more than what is available. Scarcity without choice, it means we must choose which of our needs we will fulfill and which we will leave unfulfilled. But then there is another concept called scarcity and choice. When there is scarcity and choice, there is always a cost. The cost of any choice is the option that a person gives up. So if you, and we call that opportunity cost. So if you look at this graph there on my right-hand side, it shows that as much as there are so many hours in a day, so you can do so many things. So if you have the hours and you want to study, as much as it is nice to have leisure all the time, but then you also need to study. So the 2 hours that you will take to actually study is taking away from the leisure time you could have had. So if you study an extra 2 hours, the opportunity cost is the 2 hours of leisure that now you cannot have. So real estate has scarcity. If there are too many buyers, we have too few homes. Prices run rampant and irrational exuberance ensues. This diagram on my left-hand side also explains or demonstrates nicely the scarcity of goods and services. Generally, we all know that there are limited resources in the world, but we have unlimited wants as individuals or consumers. What does this create? This creates an economic problem. There are 3 options that for dealing with scarcity. What are they? Economic growth. Economic growth is where you see new entrepreneurs entering into this particular market or whatever is on offer. Let's say real estate. So you see property developers coming up, you see other players, therefore when more property developers, other value creators like architects, their businesses expand as well, your conveyances, so there is economic growth that happens in there. Another one is you improve the use of available resources. If you see that there is a challenge in this particular market that you are in, yours is to be motivated further as an entrepreneur to do better because you anticipate that there will be competition. So you must be the supplier of choice or the actual service provider or good provider of choice, and you must do things better. So hence it's important to always monitor productivity in your organization and also get feedback from your clients so that you can do better. So the new entrants, as they are still having their teething problems, you are sharpening your knife and doing better in the business. That's what becomes a competitive advantage. Another option is to reduce your wants. We just came back from level 5. I think that problem is going to resurface again. When we were in level 5, we were all locked down. There were no restaurants, no takeaways, nothing. So one of the biggest things that was happening, we were all just eating. So there was a lot of cooking that was happening. There was a lot of baking. And one of the things that I found personally that was a very limited resource was yeast. Because we realized that there are more consumers of yeast, more than the bakers. But now people were home brewing delicious drinks at home. So there was high competition. So for bakers, we needed to look for other ingredients that can serve the same function as yeast. So you found that baking powder or things like baking soda are other options that you can use, and your bread or whatever you are cooking or baking could still serve the purpose of yeast. So that's how you reduce your want, by looking for other alternatives. Another concept that we, as we said earlier, we're going to look at is inflation. What is inflation? Inflation refers to a general rise in the level of prices of goods and services over a period of time. It is measured by calculate the percentage rate of change of a price index, such as the consumer price index, which is basically, okay, all right. My screen stopped sharing. My apologies for that. Okay. Let's just go back to where we were. Apologies for that. All right, this is basically your weighted average of many prices. So this is what we're looking at. So you put the price in the basket of the alcohol and tobacco, so that ingredient is going to be missing. Hi.
We see your screensaver.
You see my
we don't
face?
see the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, all right, let me try and share again. Okay, are we good now?
Yes,
are we
ma'am.
how? Yes. Good. All right. Thank you. So my apologies for that. Okay. So the goods that go into your basket, as we were explaining how consumer price index is calculated, your education, your alcohol and tobacco, your transport, your rent, your healthcare, your communication, they all go in there into your bucket, and then they come, Stats SA will come up with your weighted average, and then you'll come up with what your CPI is. And then what also happened is that when the CPI grows, it basically means there is healthy, the economy is healthy, which is we're referring to the gross domestic product. And when that happens, what usually happens is that you will probably have low unemployment rates, or income will increase, salaries will increase. And when that happens, it results in a higher purchasing power for people. So you have more disposable income. And when you have more disposable income, what does that mean? You have more demand for goods and services, which then will lead to an increase in general prices, because now there is a lot of demand out there. And what will result will be inflation. So as you can see on this particular graph, you can see that the red line reflects your growth, GDP growth, and the blue line reflects your inflation. So if you can look here, you can see that the GDP goes up, and then your inflation then follows. So you can see that, and they don't necessarily move at the same rate, but they kind of take a similar trajectory. So when your GDP goes up, then inflation goes up as well. I am not sure what keeps taking me out. So anyway, that's what happens as far as inflation and GDP. We have different kinds of inflations. The first inflation, we have something called demand pull inflation. This is caused by increases in combined demand due to increased private and government spending. This is constructive to a faster rate of economic growth. So this is the kind of inflation we like to see, since the excess demand and favorable market conditions will stimulate investment and expansion. And then the next, another kind of inflation is called cost push inflation. These are caused by drops in combined supply due to increased prices of inputs. So what happens, an example that we have here at the bottom is the balloons. If there is a shortage of helium, what will happen is, because there is competition, everybody wants this helium, the price will go up because there is high demand. A seller of balloons that are inflated needs helium. So that increase in helium will be factored into the balloon. So this is a cost push. It is inflation that is pushed into the balloons. So you will spend more on the balloons, not necessarily that the quality of the balloon is improved, but because one of the input costs the cost of the input cost has gone up. There is also a built-in in inflation where employers, they passing higher costs due to wage increases on to customers as higher prices. So even in here, the negotiations have happened at the bargaining council. Prices go up, and other prices is also because, the cost of living has also gone up. And then what happens, the wages, the employer, or the manufacturer or the supplier has people working for them to produce these products for us. Therefore, that increase in their wages will come and be paid for by the consumer as well. And then another concept where we are going to look at is the interest rates. What are interest rates? Interest is a fee paid or borrowed on borrowed capital. The fee is compensation to the lender for foregoing other useful investments that could have been made with the loaned money. These foregone investments are known as the opportunity cost, as we spoke earlier. So the banks could have invested their funds in the stock market, but then individuals, we need the home loans. So because they now had to forfeit whatever profits they could have made in the stock market, and they are giving the money to the applicants for home loans, what happens is that then they must charge you a fee because their money could have been working for them. But then because they're also in this business, they need to charge as well. Low interest rates put more buying power in the hands of consumers. How does that happen? When the interest rates lower, your bond repayments and anything that is interest related will go down. Therefore, you have more disposable income, and then your buying power increases. So where more money is spent in the economy, prices will go up naturally, creating inflation. There is a monetary policy that our country has adopted called inflation targeting. Inflation targeted was instituted in South Africa in the early 2000s, and the South African Reserve Bank is tasked with the responsibility of keeping the consumer price index between 3 and 6%. Consumer price index is also called inflation. The main tool used by the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee to influence inflation are the interest rates. So now we need to look at how does this inflation targeting work? What is the relationship between inflation targeting and interest rates? So the theory is that if inflation increases, the Reserve Bank Monetary Policy Committee will raise interest rates, which is the repo rate. That is the rate that the Reserve Bank lends out money to commercial banks and whoever else gets money from them. This in return, because the repo rate has increased, then the commercial banks will also increase their interest rates. What does that do? It diminishes the consumer's disposable income as more money now is spent on paying the debt, whatever kind of debt you have. Then we'll see this will then see the inflation levels declining because there is not a lot of spending happening out there. And the goal is of low and stable inflation. That's what this inflation target is about. So that is the primary objective of inflation targeting. This is believed to support economic growth and stability, because when there is economic growth and also investors see that there is stability in this, so they can predict what's going to happen to their investment, then that encourages investors investors to actually invest in that kind of economy. The current inflation rate is sitting at 4.7% in South Africa. We are living in very different times, because we would say, great, it means economy is doing well. But we all know that the economy is doing well. One of the contributing factors that I guess inflation is under control is because people are losing jobs, businesses are shutting down. So in a way, the inflation, is manageable. The demand has increased, but the economy is not doing great. So the COVID-19, is a special case, which, whatever results we see, we need to interrogate them further. They do not mean what it meant a year or two ago to have an inflation rate of 4.7%. So the diagram at the bottom shows you the repo rate. What does the repo rate affect? The repo rate will affect, of course, the commercial market rates that banks charge, the asset prices. If the interest rate goes up, then the affordability of the actual property goes down. Then it means that demand goes down. What happens when demand goes down? The prices are bound to fall. And then also when the repo rate goes up, for example, if you're a foreign investor, that's a good thing for you, because usually in countries where the economies are stable, the interest rates are low. So if they come and invest their money in South Africa, then they get better returns. So it's an opposite thing compared to when the market rate. So to a certain extent, it kind of boosts the economy, but the impact is not to overshadow the impact of the commercial banks and the local consumers. The exchange rate also is affected, and when the exchange rate is affected, it affects the import prices for all those goods. We are a importing country as much as we export, but we import more than we expect, and effectively that affects how demand will happen in the market, and at the end of the day affect inflation. So, that is just how the flow of the funds, or the impact that happens in that space. Now we move on to what is a buyer's market versus a seller's market. A buyer's market is a situation where supply exceeds demand. Prices are relatively low, and buyers therefore have an advantage. We look at the diagram below. How does the buyer's market affect buyers? There are more options for buyers, home options. There are better negotiating powers. You could potentially pay lower than the asking price. What does it mean for sellers when there is a buyer's market? It takes longer to sell your property. You may receive fewer options because there is a lot of choice out there. People are not fighting for the same property, or buyers are not fighting for the same property. You may have to accept lower than asking price. You pay seller concessions, or you have to invest and make repairs. Sometimes you even have to renovate a bit, because it happens when you want to sell your property and an estate agent comes around, and like, if you can do some minor works on your bathrooms or the kitchens, then you get a better chance of selling your property. What does it mean when you're talking about seller's market? A seller's market is a market in which sellers prosper because there is a strong demand for their goods or services. Therefore, pushing up the price, they can demand for those goods or services. What does that mean for buyers? There are fewer home options out there. There is more competition among home buyers. Important to work with a lender that can close loans quickly so they can approve your financing like that. Be prepared to pay higher than asking price, because many people are vying for this property. What does it mean for sellers? Their homes are selling quickly. You're likely to receive multiple offers, so you have choice. You could sell at a higher price than what's out there in the market, and buyers are willing to even overlook minor repairs because they just want this property. They're even prepared to do the repairs themselves. So basically, understanding this and knowing how to advise your client, or as a property developer, if you're someone who is investing in property, then you need to understand when it's time for you to buy, when it's time for you to sell and make a profits, especially if you were in investment property. So basically, all of this, if you are in this environment, this is, information that if you are in this environment, not necessarily as a real estate agent, but as anyone who's in the market, you must understand that this is a very competitive environment. So whether you are the home buyer, this tug of war that's happening is not necessarily only happening on this picture to the estate agents, but it could be the home buyers, it could be the sellers, it could be property, investors, property investors. So basically, you need to understand that this happens. Another point you just need to understand is that the market is highly competitive and diverse and has various areas of specialization. So if you are into the commercial space, you can't just say, okay, I'm in the residential market, that's where I'm investing, that's where I'm trading. There are special slightly different pieces of legislation or the ratios to look at the profitability for the different sectors.
Numisa?
And know what is the environment. Is it you or?
Oh, I just lost you there, but I was wondering if it's me or your network, but please continue.
Yeah, she got lost there for a moment. Hello, Numisa.
Back to everyone now? Yes.
Yes. Now you are back. Yeah, now you're back.
Okay. All right. Anyway, this is my last slide before we lose each other. So in estate agents, you do not earn a fixed income. You work only for commission, which is a fee that the seller agrees to pay the agent to market and sell their property. The fee is not prescribed, but they are accepted industry norms. So what you need for you to thrive and be successful in this environment, you must educate yourself, know that you know all these things we've spoken about and even more, the other information we will share later today. You must be professional. Good and just jump into areas that you are not knowledgeable about. You must network. There are many value creators, as we've spoken earlier. Your architects, your town planners will tell you what is coming. Your conveyances, your other estate agents and other property developer and even environmental consultants. You might earmark a piece of land only to find that you can only use a small fraction of it because of environmental issues affecting that piece of land. And you must be available and be professional and make sure you set up appointments, as much as you can. So these are some of the few skills or, capabilities that you must equip yourself. We have come to the end of our presentation. I hope everybody enjoyed this as much as I did. But we have an activity that we would like to ask our learners and colleagues to just engage in. So, for an example, we'd like you to conduct a profiling exercise on the topics or the categories, which is real estate. What really, when you're trying to, so you must find 5 factors that you will look at when you're trying to define the real estate area. What is it when you say, this is my real estate, this is the area that I am looking at? Find 5 factors that will help you define that. Or area population. Can you give me the various 5 factors that can define the population in this particular area? And also the same 5 factors that will define the typical buyer in the area. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope tomorrow we can be able to engage on this, and I get your exciting inputs in terms of how you see this exercise in your context and how you understood what we've spoken about today. Thank you very much. And this is the information in terms of for any further communication, questions or inquiries. We have Mashiko there, and this course will run until Friday. So thank you very much to all of you.